Hey guys, Connor Richards of PokerNews here at the 2024 WSOP in Las Vegas, and this is Life Outside Poker. My guest for this episode is Shannon Elizabeth, who you may know from her roles in movies like Scary Movie and American Pie. She's also a poker player who has played against the likes of Jeff Madsen and Barry Greenstein, and also runs an animal sanctuary in South Africa. Let's get into it. All right, Shannon, well, thank you so much for coming and doing this interview. It's one that I'm really excited for. Of course, everybody knows you from your role in American Pie, a very iconic movie and role. But the role that I know you most from is Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, because that's, for whatever reason, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it just brings back so many memories. So I want to talk to you about all that. But I mean, let's go back even further, because you're from Waco, Texas. Is that right?
I am. I was born in Houston, but I grew up in Waco.
Born in Houston, both interesting places, but Waco probably a little more interesting. But tell people what Waco's like.
It's changed a lot. I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of development in the city yet, but now you've got Chip and Joanna Gaines there. It's known for so much more. So I think it's really grown since I've been there. So I don't really know what it's like too much now, but yeah, it was a very quiet town growing up, and it was very safe. And I had amazing high school and teachers. And I mean, I don't really know what to say. It's been a long time since I've been there.
And how'd you get involved in acting or modeling? Which one of those came first?
So modeling came first, but kind of by accident, because there was a local band in Waco named High Five, and they wanted their first music video to be done in their hometown. And my dad, it was my senior year, and my dad was reading the newspaper and read that they were casting for extras downtown. And they were just, cattle call. And so I went down there, and somehow I got what they considered was a featured extra, but let's be honest, it was just an extra. I mean, I'm in it for like a second or two. But the producer and director were from New York, and I got to chatting with the producer, and he was saying, you should really come out to New York and try to model. I'm like, I want to act. I don't really want to model. But at the time, models did commercials and actors did commercials. So I thought, well, maybe I could use it as a stepping stone to cross over into acting. And he ended up coming to my house, chatting to my parents. They were like, why is this guy here? But he convinced them, like, come out during your Christmas break, come out to New York and just do some photos and meet some agents and see. So we did, and I got signed, and I moved out there 9 days after I graduated. And interesting fact, the director of that music video was Antoine Fuqua.
Oh, okay.
Before he became Antoine Fuqua, who's done like Training Day and all the other amazing films he's done. So I don't know. I assume it's one of his early projects.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
And you were very young when you got out there to New York. You were probably still, 18 years old?
17, I think.
17, wow.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, New York City?
I got out there in the summer, and so for 3 months, it was a lot of interns from all over the country would come and stay in NYU housing.
Okay.
So for whatever they were interning for, a lot of college students would come out, writers and other models. And it was an interesting experience. I was very homesick for a long time and trying to get used to the city and being on my own. And yeah, it was interesting. It took a while for me to kind of get on my feet, I think, and find myself in everything I was doing. I was just really thrown in the deep end, but I made friends really quick. And a couple of the friends that lived in that NYU housing, I've stayed in touch with. There were two writers, a writing team, and then they branched off on their own. And the movie Emancipation that Will Smith just did.
Oh, yeah?
One of those guys wrote that movie.
Wow.
Bill Collage. So we've stayed very close contact. And
that's fun, yeah.
Yeah. It was just this kind of melting pot of amazing people that all scattered and did cool things.
So you started getting into acting through commercials. What was the first big role, or what was the first big thing that got you into acting?
Well, there's a couple, there was career big, just for me, and then there was the big. Mm-hmm. So I eventually moved out to LA. I modeled for a year before I even tried to act. I wanted to just know that I could compete there. I was never planning on staying in LA, but I booked a commercial. And so then I stayed a little longer and I booked another commercial. And when you book 2 commercials that are both SAG, which is the union there, somebody has to do what's called Taft-Hartley you, which they basically have to sponsor you into the union. And so what I was hoping would happen happened. I somehow manifested that commercials got me into the union, so then I could start trying to act. And so I started going to acting classes, and I did a role on a show called Arliss, which you probably don't know what that is, but it was on HBO, and he played a sports agent. And there were a bunch of every episode would have big names all throughout, usually athletes and stuff. And I played a Russian tennis player. And people don't really know that because later I played the same kind of role. But I played a Russian tennis player in that. And it was like John McEnroe and Dweezil Zappa and John Sally. Like there were all these amazing people in it. So for me, that was my first kind of big role because it gave me a tape to give to an agent or a manager and try to get like a better agent or, move up the ranks. It gave me something to show people. I had done small roles before, but this one, it was a much bigger part for me. And then I did American Pie. And funny fact, I don't know if you know this, I did a post earlier, but 25 years ago today was the American Pie premiere.
Oh, really?
25 years ago today. I'm like, I can't believe it's been 25 years. But that was my first studio film. And that was obviously the real launch pad for me and the real breakthrough. And I think I just got very lucky. And some people are just good at certain accents. And that was an accent where, because I had done it before, it's just one of the only things that became my go-to accent. And I don't know why or where it came from. In acting class, I was trying to do a French accent. And somebody that was working with me was like, for this audition, remember that French accent you tried to do? Do that because it sounded Russian. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know. And then they kept playing with the accent so much in post when we did it. I didn't think there was an accent left on it. They kept saying, do less, do less, do less. And before the movie came out, I told all my friends, oh, this movie's going to suck.
Really?
Yeah. Because when I was doing post, they kept telling me to do less. Like do it like you've been here a long time. I'm like, but there's no accent left on it. Like, to me, it sounded like I wasn't even doing an accent at times. So, I was like, don't watch the movie. It's going to be horrible. Luckily, I don't know anything.
Well, when did you realize, first of all, that is pretty crazy that we're doing this interview on the 25th anniversary. That's so serendipitous. But when did you realize that this movie was going to, be a cultural phenomenon?
Well, I mean, the premiere was so big and it had so many recognizable faces that I looked up to as an actor. I think then we started to be like, this is going to be a really big movie. I mean, we didn't really know what it was or why, but, in my younger generation, Fast Times at Ridgemont High was quite a big movie. So people were starting to say, well, it's like the new generation of that. So, I mean, I don't know. Nobody knew when we were making it that it would become what it became. And from the premiere on, it was just this roller coaster ride that everybody just had to hold on tight and go on.
How old were you in that? Were you 18?
No, I think I was 24 when I shot that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's still a pretty young age to be rocketed into stardom. What kind of an effect did that have on you all of a sudden, going Hollywood?
It was, luckily you have such a team of people around you that you really do just have to do everything they say. You just hold on. Like they're saying, be here at this time, do this. We're going to take you here. You're going to do this show. And then we're going to change clothes and do this show. And every day was like that. And then it's on to the next film. And then you're on set there for whatever the period of time is. And then you're doing press again. So it's like film press, film press, film press. It's just really a roller coaster ride. And it was really fun. I've got to say, I love acting. And I love just creating. And so it was a fun ride. And I'm just really grateful that I had that opportunity and could create some things that people seem to like.
Yeah, well, that movie had a massive impact. Like I said, it was a cultural phenomenon. What are your thoughts on how it's aged as far as, do you think a movie like that could get made today? And also, no?
No, it could never be made today, no.
Even back then, it was probably pretty controversial. What was the climate like back then, putting out a movie like that?
I think that part of the controversy back then was just like, oh my gosh, have we advanced that far? We're allowed to put this on TV or on the big screen, So it was just one of those things where it really pushed the boundaries. And I think that's what made it so funny and work for that period of time. Now, in this day and age and the culture, and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be the same. Like, nobody dares to make that movie that way now.
It's true. But there were some sequels to that movie that you also starred in. What was it like returning and, now that this is already a big thing, getting to make another movie?
It was really scary. It was nerve-wracking because you want to live up to what people want from you and what you expect of yourself, and you want to live up to it. And so it was really scary. I think everybody had that feeling, like it was hard. Yeah, it was really hard. And then when we did the press tour for American Pie 2, we were in Europe for 9/11. And so that was a whole experience because we were actually in Germany, a whole group of us. We were just going press to press. We'd already been in London and I think Italy or France, and now we're in Germany. And we go into an interview and they say, something's happened, but just go into the next interview and we'll chat with you after.
Wow.
Like,
that's crazy.
Everybody was still trying to work out what was happening. We came out of the interview and they're like, press tour's over. We're like, why? What happened? And so then we all talk about it and try to figure out, well, what? What's next? There's no flights. There's nothing. Press tour's over. What do we do? And one of the guys didn't want to get on a plane even over there. So we ended up driving to a port where we could get on a boat back to the UK. And then we were in the UK for probably 10 days. And then eventually Universal Studios chartered a plane to get us all home, because some of the cast weren't comfortable on a commercial plane yet. So that was a very bonding experience, but something we really didn't expect, but that's what happened.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to be over there during 9/11.
Yeah.
And so other than the American Pie sequels, it sounds like American Pie just opened up so many doors for you. You start getting all these roles in things like Scary Movie, the one I mentioned, Jane Silent Bob. How did those projects come about?
Well, I had a 3-picture deal with Miramax. And so when Scary Movie came along, they'd actually offered me a smaller role as part of my 3-picture deal. And I had read the script and I'm like, I love the script. I don't like this role though. I want the role of Buffy. And they're like, Keenan wants a blonde for Buffy. I'm like, yeah, I want to fight for Buffy. Can I do that? So they let me go in and read for Keenan and like a whole row of like producers and people. And luckily I went in early. Like I was one of the first groups of people to audition, and I made him laugh. I was the whole death scene. And so, I mean, imagine you're in this room by yourself, doing a scene by yourself, but somebody's supposed to be there killing you. And I was like, how do I do this? And so when I did the scene, I crawled up. He was at a table like this, and I crawled up to the edge of the table, and I put my head on the table in front of him. And I did the rest of the scene like this, so he could only see my head. And it made him really laugh, and nobody else did that. And they went cross country for like 4 months trying to cast this movie and like auditioning people from everywhere. And I just sat and like tried to meditate on it a lot and manifest I wanted this role. And in the end, they came back and said, okay, Keenan says he'll change the blonde and the brunette roles. So Buffy can be brunette and the other role can be blonde. And like he started shuffling stuff around. So then I got called in for a chemistry read with some of the other cast. And it happened. And I was so excited because that was the first time I was ever really able to fight for a role like that I really, really wanted. And then with Jay and Silent Bob, I went in to read with Kevin. And I was sitting in his office. And he knew, he was basically offering me the role, but I didn't know who Kevin Smith was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I watched Chasing Amy, but I didn't really know who he was, and I didn't watch Clerks or any of his other films. So I'm sitting in this little office with Jason Mewes, and Kevin's here, and I'm there, and Kevin's chain smoking, or they're both chain smoking, and it's a tiny little office, and I'm like, I can't breathe. And we're trying to like read together, and it was quite an experience. And I said to him, here are my thoughts on the role, and her name is Justice, and so I was going to do like a little tattoo, Scales of Justice, and I was thinking of doing my hair like more like blonde, and I went through this whole thing, and he looked at me, he was like, I just thought you'd come do the role. If you want to do that, you can. Like, I just wanted you for the role, but do what you want. I'm like, okay. And so he really gave me free rein to play with the character. And I mean, I added the glasses because Justice is blind. And so I thought, like,
that's
pretty deep.
Thing
I was trying to be really creative with it. But yeah, it was amazing because he let me play and have fun. And he was like a real friend. Like, we could really chat about deep things and hang out. And I was actually, and he would introduce me to people, and he'd be like, this is one of my actresses, Shannon. She doesn't know who I am, but he would always like rip me for that.
So
like,
you had told him that you weren't for the right
I told him I didn't know. I mean, eventually, I don't think the first meeting I told him. No, or he might have asked me the first meeting, have you seen my films? And I'm like, no, it's all Chasing Amy. I think that might be what happened.
And that's a crazy movie because, it's like a stoner comedy or whatever, but you look and Ben Affleck's in it, Will Ferrell's in it. There's a lot of heavy hitters in that movie.
A lot of heavy hitters. I mean, this is the genius of his films. Like, every one of his movies has a lot of names in it, and they all come back because they love him, because he's such a great guy to work with and to work for, that anybody who's worked with him says yes.
And they did a sequel to that in 2019, and you came back for that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Was that fun?
Oh my gosh. I got to work with Rosario Dawson in that one. And I was so happy to be a part of it because I'd heard rumors that it was going to happen. And I would go to Comic-Cons and people would ask me, I'm like, I don't know. I haven't heard from him yet. I don't know. And then I think it was further down when they were actually starting to cast, I got a call. I was like, oh, cool, I get to be in it? That sounds fun. I would love to do that.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so we talked about some of your big roles. One that we didn't talk about, this one might have been before American Pie. That 70s show, you had a recurring role on that.
That was after.
It was after?
Yeah, it was after, yeah.
What was that like?
That was actually really, really fun. I was told ahead of time, be careful. Like, the cast is very tight-knit, and it's hard to, get in with a cast when they're already a family. So I show up day one with I think it was the first day we filmed, so live audience filming, and I've got gifts for everyone, and I'm trying to win them over and tried really hard to be friends, and luckily some of them played poker, so we would play poker on set after filming sometime. So it was actually quite amazing, and Morgan Fairchild played my mom, which was awesome. And I think one of my first episodes, Brooke Shields was there in her role. And I couldn't believe it. It was really an honor to play that.
Let's talk more about those poker games, because I think our audience will appreciate that. Yeah. Any good memories, or who was the best player from the group?
From that group?
Yeah.
Danny Masterson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember one of the first times I think I ever finally beat him in a hand, he was not happy, or I knocked him out or something. But for me, it was a big deal because I was still really new to the game, and I think he'd been playing a while. He was actually quite a good player. Yeah.
Had you been into poker at that point, or was that kind of your introduction?
No. I think I'd been in for a little bit. I don't remember the exact years that was. I always have to go back and look at when Celebrity Poker Showdown was, because that was my introduction.
Oh, okay.
So if you go on IMDb, Celebrity Poker Showdown, whatever year that was, early 2000s, that was my actual introduction. They taught me backstage how to play. The producer's like, all right, here are the cards. Here's a flop, turn, and river. Okay, go play. I was like, but you don't draw and discard. I'm used to rummy, other card games. I'm like, this game's stupid. I don't understand. Like, you just have 2 cards and that's it? Like, of course I got knocked out first. I think Snoop Dogg was at my table.
Really?
And I think he might have even won. I can't remember.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. It took a while.
But it sounds like you were already into card games.
When I was young, it's funny, we would go visit my grandparents. Now, I have a female first cousin, a couple years older than me. So our dads are brothers. And so we would all be at my grandparents' house. She would be in the bathroom putting on makeup, and I would be sitting at the kitchen table playing cards with my grandmother. And now we cut to when we're grown up, I'm still playing cards. And she was a news anchor in New York where she had to put on tons and tons of makeup all day, every day. And I'm like, yeah, that was just a little foreshadowing of our lives there.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So when did you start? So you were introduced to poker through that Showdown. When did you realize, like, okay, this is something that, this is a skill game. This is something I think that I'm good at. This is something I enjoy doing.
Okay, those are different questions. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing it now. I think I'm good at it. It's never happened. I'm not good at the game. I'm not good. I might be good in certain circles, but certainly not at the WSOP. I have had no results this year. It's funny because in the beginning, when I first started coming, I was getting advice from Joe Seabach. And then I started getting advice from Barry Greenstein, and I was getting results, and I was cashing a little bit. And then I started getting advice from other pros and other people, and I think I started thinking too much. It's almost like the less you know, the better, because I was doing really well, and I didn't know that I should have folded a hand. Because, like, when I played the NBC Heads Up Championship, people, like, there was one of the pros that watches, like, she should have folded that hand. And it's the hand I won with. But I didn't know. Like, so really ignorance can be bliss in poker. I didn't know that I shouldn't have been playing that hand. And I thought I played it well. I was happy. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I absolutely love the game. And I love, like, when it started to click for me that it was less about the cards and more about the people and playing the players and the psychological aspect of the game, that's when I fell in love with the game. Mm-hmm. And the game has changed a lot. Now there's all these solvers, GTO Wizard, and all these training things. And back in the day, there was none of that. All that was happening then was you had all of these brick and mortar pros that were now having to navigate all these online players that were starting to come to the casinos. And so I got to kind of witness the merging of that. So at the time, I mean, I think I called them like the hoodie guys. They're the online players. We're always like wearing a hoodie at the table. I was like just dodging the hoodie guys because I actually like felt like I understood the pros better than the hoodie guys because they were just more aggressive. And now everybody's aggressive. Everything's a minefield. Everyone thinks they're playing GTO and this is what the solver tells them to do. And even if they're in with the worst hand, they're always going to get lucky and hit it on the rimmer.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is a minefield right now, and I haven't figured out how to navigate that yet.
Yeah, and you have been playing this summer. You've been playing, we were talking that you've been playing some events this summer and some World Series events. What are the fields like these days? You mentioned they're a lot tougher, but... They're
a lot bigger fields. I got to be honest. I think it was the PokerNews event was the first event I played.
Nice.
And my day was like 5,000 something people. I can't remember if it was just a single, I think it was, I can't remember if it was multiple day ones, but I'm like, this is a big event. Like to get down to one and it's 5,000 already. It's not even a main event. And I wasn't used to like such big fields like every tournament. So it's a lot more you have to navigate. And then when you start looking at the payouts, you really realize you can't play to cash. You have to play to win. And so I remember the pros talking to me about that early on, like, don't play just to make the money and just to get to the bubble and like just eke by. Like you got to play to win, give yourself a chance, which is like accepting that you might go out really early. You might take a chance and take some risks, but it could put you over the top in chips. And so there are times now that I think about that. And I was playing a deep stack the other day and decided to take one of those chances because I'd been doing really well. I had a good stack. And it was one of those things where it's like, I had ace king, a guy had pushed, and I'm like debating it. And I was thinking okay, the payouts are quite low unless you can get up there. So I think I'm going to have to just take a chance here. Maybe he has ace queen, maybe he has a middle pair and I've got 2 overs, maybe, And so I took a chance. It didn't pay off. He had kings. So,
oh, wow.
So yeah, it was kind of worst case scenario really. But that, I think accepting that and being able to emotionally like let it go and move on and get to the next one. I mean, I've only played, I think, 2 WSOP events this year.
Yeah.
I didn't play the main. I just played a couple things because I was so focused on my fundraiser that was right before. It was between the PokerNews and the deep stack, actually. I just needed to focus on that. And now I'm just kind of like having fun. I'll play like a nightly or something later.
So you didn't play the main event, but you were a part of Phil Hellmuth's very grand introduction. I got to see that firsthand. It's always a spectacle with him. Are you friends with Phil? How do you know him?
Yeah, no, I know him from back in the day. I mean, he's one of the icons, like all the pros that were around back then. He's amazing. And I hadn't seen him all summer. And we have a mutual friend that said, come say hi. This is where he is. It's going to be right before he goes in. Like, okay, we'll stop by. So I stopped by to say hi, and he's like, come dress up. I'm like, no. And he's like, come dress up. I'm like, no. And then somehow he convinced me, and then I walked in the back, and everybody's there, and Scotty Wynn is there, and Joe Stapleton's there. Like, people I know from back in the day, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. It sounds fun. So yeah, it was actually really fun.
You ended up being kind of a big part of it because they go up on stage and you did like a choreographed kick where you pretend to kick Jungle Man, and I gotta say that was an impressive kick.
Thank you.
Do you have a martial arts background, or is that just the acting? Or
I don't know what that is. I did Krav Maga back in the day, but no martial arts. I think he had said in the room like, let's like do a move with them. And I was just joking around and did a kick. And they were like, yeah, do that. That works. I'm like, but if I kick, you have to go down. What's funny is I didn't know who Jungle Man was. Okay. Like I got told later, like he's one of the top pros in the world. And I had no idea.
Yeah,
I'm like, I feel so bad. I'm like kicking him in the head. But it was really fun. I was praying like, because I haven't done a kick like that in a long time. And in one of the rehearsals, I almost lost my balance because I kicked so high and hard that my other foot almost went out from underneath me. So all I was thinking is, please don't fall when I kick. Just don't fall on your butt when you kick. That won't be good. I would have to play it off as something.
Yeah, it's definitely an impressive kick.
Thanks.
And how about just being here at the WSOP? Before this interview, there were people asking you for photos and things like that. Do you get that a lot at the tables?
Sometimes if people recognize me, or if like one person asks and other people are like, it is her. Like nobody is sure. I mean, in the beginning, when nobody knew I was out here, like the PokerNews event, nobody knew like I was there. Until one guy at the table said something about, oh, like you've been on TV, like, and he's like, I've seen you streaming to some other guy. And the guy was like, yeah, I've been streaming, and he's thinking, and he's like, what do you mean like you've seen her? What has she done? And the guy didn't say anything, and he looks at me a little bit later, he's thinking about it, he goes, have you been streaming too? Or do you stream on YouTube? I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe. So like I was really low key, you guys didn't even know I was here, because I just kind of like snuck in, did it, and busted and left.
Yeah, well, that's funny that guy ended up saying that, and then, yeah, people picked up. Let's go back to that Heads Up Championship, the NBC thing in 2007, because we didn't mention that you did really well in that. You finished third for 125,000, was it?
Yeah.
And you were competing against big pros. You mentioned Barry Greenstein had been helping you. You also beat him in a heads-up match, is that right?
Yeah, that's kind of like the start in my moment of poker. It's like... I got lucky. I got really lucky, and that was the hand that another pro said she shouldn't have played it that way, but I didn't know. And once I think I flopped the full house. And once I did that, I tried to let him catch up. And I just got lucky that he did with the straight. He caught up with a straight, so that's why we got it all in.
It sounds like you played it well. You let the guy catch up, and you had the best of it on the flop. So
I had a lot of pros that were helping me for that whole series. Mm-hmm. And so when I knew what my draw was, like friends would be like, okay, this is how they're going to play you, and this is how you should play them. And that advice really helped me a lot. And I was actively trying to manifest things then. I was actively like really meditating and picturing what was going to happen. But with Barry, they had said to me, he's going to put pressure on you and he's going to raise every hand. So disregard the raise. Pretend like the raise is just the blind. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what I did. I just ignored that he was doing it and just kept playing. And this is also the ignorance is bliss. I just didn't know. And we were friends. And so, that I never expected to beat him. I had Jeff Madsen before that. He and I were friends. I didn't expect to meet him. I just got lucky. That's all it was, so I can't say it was really skill.
Well, those Jeff Madsen and Barry Greenstein, two absolute crushers. So very impressive to beat them. Were you happy with the third place finish, or was it kind of heartbreaking getting that close?
It was heartbreaking. But when I talked to, who was it, Paul that won?
Paul Wishiak?
Yeah. What? No. I should remember the name now. Sorry. But when I spoke to him after our match, he was like, towards the end, he said he went on such a heater. I don't think I ever ended up watching it. They cut out a lot of hands, I think. But he went on such a heater. He said it honestly didn't matter what hand you pushed with or raised with. I had it every time. And I was like, okay, so there's nothing I could do. He was meant to win that. I was still really proud of myself because that is my biggest win. And I hope to one day be able to do a win like that again. I've had other smaller wins, but that was really a big one for me.
What are some of the other career highlights poker-wise that you remember?
There was a year that I came out here. I was meant to do the midnight countdown on New Year's Eve at one of the hotels.
Oh, wow. And
that day, there was a big poker tournament that was hosted by Nikki Hilton and the guy she was dating at the time who played Turtle on Entourage. I forgot his name. Sorry. We can look that up later.
We're signed up.
Sorry. But they were hosting the tournament. And a lot of the pros came over for it. First place was $50,000. And it was New Year's Eve. Everybody's in town and just having fun. Now, I had gone out the night before all night. I was out with a friend I hadn't seen in a long time, and we were doing Vegas big, and I don't think I slept at all. Okay? So I went to the tournament exhausted, saying, I'm going to throw it because I need to sleep before the midnight countdown. And so, this is truly one of these tournaments where I was like, all in, all in, all in, all in. And people started calling me, and all I started doing was doubling. I won the whole tournament.
That's crazy.
So again, not skill. I was totally lucky that I just won that event. So by then I was on such a high, and the tournament went so late. I think the tournament only finished at 10:30, and I had to go change and get ready for the midnight countdown to host at a club. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't showered, hadn't done anything, and I had a lot to do in very little time.
That's pretty crazy.
But it was fun, and our adrenaline was going. I had friends here with me for the whole thing, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that really is amazing. And whenever people hear from celebrities playing poker, they want to hear about the Hollywood stars that they've played with. There's things like Molly's Games and all these legendary things. We talked about the That 70s Showcast, but who are some of the people in Hollywood who you've played cards with?
Gosh, I think anybody that you've seen on TV or you read about playing, I probably played with it one time.
Really?
Because there were so many fundraisers and everybody would go, whether it was like James Woods, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, they would do their own fundraisers. So I got invited to their like poker fundraiser. Ricky Lake was at it. Audley Harrison, the boxer, I met there. I mean, name the person that plays, and at some point I played with them because I think all the actors want to play for charity and they want to support fundraisers, and they get to still play and have fun. And I mean, I'd rather play in a charity fundraiser so I know my money is going to charity and not like, you know, a big event like this where it's not going to a good cause and I'm just donating money. So we want to be able to support at the same time we're having fun.
Yeah. Well, speaking of charity tournaments is a nice transition because you are very charitable yourself. You started an animal organization back in the early 2000s, and now you have another foundation, the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation. What first got you into being passionate about animal rights?
You know, I've loved animals since I was a little kid. It's just something that I was born with, that I just realized over time that my mission on the planet is to help animals. And so when I was first in a position to start giving back around American Pie, I started looking at dog and cat rescues around LA because dogs are what I knew. Like I'd always had dogs, and realized I just wanted to do my own organization. And over time, I just wanted to help more animals on a bigger scale, went on a journey of figuring out what that was, and realized there was this hectic poaching crisis going on in other parts of the world that I just didn't even know existed. I had been to South Africa and Kenya around 2008, I think it was. And I remember seeing rhino then, but I didn't know there was a poaching crisis. I didn't realize what was happening. And around 2014, I moved to New York. And for some reason, I just started paying attention to a lot of conservation organizations. And I stepped back and looked at my life over the last few years and realized a lot of people from South Africa had been coming into my life. And so I felt like the universe was trying to tell me something. And then one night I was getting ready to go out to dinner, and something in my head said, check Instagram. And I didn't know what I was checking for or why. And I had started following all these conservation orgs. And there was this one video where the ranger's scanning with his phone, and he's like, this poor baby's been out here all night suffering. And what you saw was the trunk of an elephant, and then separated, you saw a head, and you could kind of make out a face, not really, but I could make out the mouth. And she moved. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I didn't realize that these animals were getting tortured the way they are. I think I just naively assumed that poaching meant they would go out there, shoot and kill the animal, and then they would take the horn or the tusk. But what was actually happening is they would shoot to immobilize the animal, or they would cut their Achilles tendon so they couldn't run. They would cut their spinal cord to paralyze them. Then they would take what they wanted and leave them to bleed out. And I remember going to dinner and just crying, and I was trying to hold it in, and I was trying to stop, and it had flipped a switch in me. And I said, this is what I want to do with the organization. I don't know what I can do. I don't know how I can help, but I need to do something now that I know that this is what's happening. So I organized like a crowdfunding kind of thing, raised some funds, went out there just on my own dime and just started to meet people. And I went to 3 organizations that were recommended by some friends and said, I have $10,000 for each of you to buy supplies. What can I buy you? And I just started that way, just to meet people and learn. Like, I needed to learn why this was happening. And when I went back to New York after that trip, that was 2015, I just realized I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to go back to South Africa and be closer to the issues and keep trying to work on something. So I moved out there at the end of 2016, And shortly after that, I was introduced to my husband now. We had met briefly before, but like we kind of got together then and started chatting. He grew up in conservation. His father is quite a well-known conservationist. And we kind of joined forces to say, well, what can we bring to this that plays to our skill sets? What can we do to help? And so we created different programs along the way, but where we've landed now is we have a sanctuary in the Eastern Cape area. We have a blind black rhino that we're taking care of. And he's a very rare subspecies of black rhino, and he came from the national park. So we work in partnership with them. And there's less than 400 of him left in South Africa. So we are raising the funds to expand the anti-poaching units and all the security at the sanctuary so that we can bring in more rhinos so that he can breed and help to repopulate. And that's a big focus for us right now. There's other animals that are at the sanctuary because it is wild, but we've created the intensive protection zone where our rhino is. His name is Munu. And we care for him every day, and he comes back to a safe space at night. So it's much easier to protect him because he is in a safe area. But he has big camps during the day that he can go out into and live like a wild rhino. But when we bring in other females for him, they will be wild, and we have a much bigger area to protect. So figured I wanted to bring together my two worlds. I kind of took a break from poker for a long time while I was focusing on setting all this up. I've come back to poker and said, let's do poker fundraising, bring the poker world together with this cause, and introduce people to how amazing the wild is and Africa. Because I think every poker player needs to get away and clear their head, and there is no better place than doing it in the African bush. So I did my first fundraiser out here on July 3rd with Matt Stout, Poker Pro Matt Stout, and Charity Series of Poker. He helped me set everything up. I had met Matt way back in the day, I think at one of his other events. So he helped me set everything up. And I mean, it was actually quite an amazing success. We had Jeff Madsen and Barry Greenstein both came and supported me. Yeah, we had a lot of people there. People came that I hadn't seen in so long to reconnect with this community that has been so warm and welcoming. I mean, everybody should want me at their table because they're going to knock me out. I'm easy money. Like, I'm going to donate my chips to you at some point. Even if I start out strong, at some point they're going back. But I actually do really love the game, and I've realized that acting was brought to me as my job and a way to create a platform to do my mission on the planet, which is help the animals. So, and I think poker was brought to me to give me a way of helping the animals. So we're going to do this every single year. We might pull it back to be a few days before the main event. I would actually love people's advice on that because, a lot of the pros, we did it on day 1A. And Matt said he's had really good results with that day. But a lot of the pros were playing, and a lot of the satellite winners, they play day 1A. So there are a lot of people that couldn't play that maybe would have come. And I'm thinking if we do it a few days before, maybe the weekend before. I know there are other events and other satellite events, but I just want to try to find the best time to do it where people can just take a break, have some fun before the main, come get their confidence up and do some just fun, beat everyone. Come over there. And we had this incredible rhino trophy. And in the end, people were like, I don't want the money, I want the rhino trophy. And I didn't expect that. But we're going to have the same trophy for the next 3 years. We've already got it set up. So I'm hoping that people will come out and compete for that trophy and have some fun because the vibe in the room was really great. And I'm just really grateful to everyone that came because a few weeks before, I hadn't had a lot of time to focus on it because we have a sick family member we were visiting, and I just hadn't gotten to I really need to start inviting and pushing. And a few weeks before, I think we only had 30 RSVPs. I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to come to this. We're not going to make anything. And in the end, we had 113 registered to play, and it was really successful. And I'm just really, really grateful for people stepping up and helping me. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So hopefully next year you'll come.
I will. I was going to say, I've gone to a lot of those charity series of poker's events. I'm based here in Vegas, so I go whenever I can. So I'm really sad to have missed that one, but next year, count me in. I will be there.
And I would love to hear from people, like when they think a good time to do it next year would be. Because once the schedule is like announced for next year's WSOP, then I'll look at, when maybe there's a gap just before. Because it's also great that I want to do it that close to the main, because then people are in from out of town.
Yeah.
And there's a really big poker community in South Africa where I live. So all the South African players are here, and they all came out to support me. And it's a South African organization as well, so a cause, So I want to make sure that I do it when they're all in town too. And yeah, it's really great to like bring people together. I think that's the fun of poker. You bring people together from all over the world to play this common game, and you get to sit at the table and chat. Like not all my tables chat. Some people are like really heavy energy, but it's fun when you can just sit at the table and chat, and you meet some amazing people. And I know a lot of people who've met through poker go on to do other things, other businesses and stuff together. But it's one of these bonding things. Like they say a soccer ball in any country bonds you. I feel like poker does too.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, it's so great to hear about this charity work you're doing. I'm also a big animal person, and funny enough, in the last year or so, I was reading a book about elephant conservation. It's called The Animal Whisperer, and it was a conservation in South Africa, and they talked about how bringing in wild elephants and trying to keep them in the sanctuary, they would, break out of the electric fences and things like that. Is it just as difficult housing a rhino in a sanctuary?
I think the book you're talking about, is it The Elephant Whisperer?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great book, and they're making it into a film, I think.
Oh, they are?
Well.
Okay,
yeah,
that's exciting.
It's a very well-known story. It's amazing what he was able to do. I think there's a difference. There's a difference in rhino species, and there's a difference in if they're blind or not.
Sure.
So white rhino and black rhino are very different. Black rhino are known to be much more aggressive. But there's a part of conservation that's not as nice. And if you have a wild animal and there's too many, say, in this area, and you need to transfer that animal to another park to release them, what you have to do is you have to put that animal into a boma, which is a small space that you build for them that will house them for a period of time. And you also have to put them in there. So you have to do it for a few reasons. One, to make sure they don't have any diseases, because you don't want to transfer disease from one area to another. And you need to tame them down so that they don't go crazy in a crate when you move them. And so that part of it can be really hectic, because a black wild rhino wants out. You can't blame them. Like, they want out of that space. So there's a way that people do it where they can tame them down, make sure they're not sick, and then you move them. And that can be quite hectic. But if you do that and then you put them in a bigger space, say that's not as small, but maybe it's not completely like huge, they are much more chill at that moment now. So, the goal is to always keep wild animals wild. That's what you always want. But there are mechanisms in place for when you need to transfer animals, because if there's too many, say, elephants in an area, what a lot of people do, because transferring elephants is expensive, and what a lot of people end up doing is shooting them. And they will find a family unit, because elephants are very family oriented, and they will call the whole family so that one isn't left behind that's sad and upset. And it's a horrible part of conservation, and I stay very far away from that part of it, but I know it's a reality, and I've talked to guys that have had to do it, and they cry. Because the smaller a space, if you have a park of any kind and there's a fence around it, the smaller the space, the more you have to manage it. Because if you have too much of a population in there and it kills all the rest of it or eats everything, the whole thing is out of balance. So the bigger the space and the less fences there are, the more wild it is, the better. And then you don't have to manage it so much. And so like where our sanctuary is, we're actually part of a project called the Eden to Addo Corridor. And they are trying, private owners everywhere are trying to buy up land throughout this corridor so everyone can drop fences. Animals migrate naturally east to west. And this would open up an enormous corridor for them that would be bigger than Kruger National Park, which is the big national park that most people have heard of in South Africa. So our property would fall within this corridor. So we're looking to acquire land around us, and we would be dropping fences to become part of this corridor. So that's like the bigger vision, the bigger goal, so that things like that never have to happen.
Yeah, that's so great. And also in The Elephant Whisperer, what I learned is just how kind of emotionally intelligent elephants are as creatures. It makes the story that you told just that much more heartbreaking. Is it similar for rhinos? Are they very
Oh my God,
intelligent?
Exactly the same. One thing we've noticed with Munu, like, do you have a dog?
I have had a dog in the past. I don't right now.
So you might know that when you leave your dog alone and say you've been on a trip and you come back, they're quite angry with you. They're excited to see you, but then they're like angry with you for a day or two. And we've noticed with Munu, it's exactly the same. So if we've been away from the sanctuary, he'll come over and say hi really quickly, and then he's off. He doesn't care. You've left me. You haven't been here. But then give him a couple days, and then he comes over to us, and he hangs out with us, and he vocalizes, and he's back to his normal self. And he makes the most amazing noises, but he has different ones. So a rhino, you've probably never heard a rhino's noise.
I haven't.
So it sounds like, But if he's upset or he's waiting for, like, we hang browse in his boma at night because he'll stay in there at night for safety, and he knows that, and he wants it, and he loves it. We supplement it with lucerne and fresh water, so he gets excited when the guys are hanging browse, and he wants to get in. And so then his vocalization goes from that to, it is hysterical. We started hearing this and we're like, is this real? Like, he's angry now. But when you spend time with these animals, you start to realize, like, they're much more like us than we think they are. They just speak a different language, so it's like learning the language they're speaking and what things mean. I mean, if he's upset, he does a thing called scent marking, which would look kind of like peeing to someone, but it's scent marking. And if he's like upset with you, or if there's like a guy and he feels like he's competing, he'll come over and he'll turn around and he'll scent mark. If you have to like grab your equipment and run really quick. We see it start to happen. We're like, okay, back up. But animals I believe all animals are really emotionally intelligent. They all have their family units. They all have emotions where they're upset and they cry when they lose one, but sometimes they just have to like get over it quickly and move on if they're in danger. Elephants are exceptionally emotional. Absolutely. What's heartbreaking with rhinos is that, and this is for elephants too, actually, but with like the rhino babies, when they go into an orphanage, they're there because their mom was killed by a poacher usually. And if their mom was killed by a poacher, they watched it happen. And so now you are asking this little baby rhino who watched their mother get butchered and tortured and bleed out by this two-legged human thing. And now the same two-legged human thing has now brought them to another area and is trying to give them milk and trying to take care of them and trying to help them. And that's a really hard thing for them because they're going to remember that always. They always remember it. My girlfriend had an orphanage, and this was before we had our land, and we were over there with her, and she brought in this little black rhino baby. And she drove for hours to pick this baby up and brought it back, and he's under heat lamps for a while until he gets a bit older and he's fed. And so this particular day, she's like, now I can let him outside. He's gained enough weight. I can let him outside for the first time. And we're all standing outside with our cameras watching. And he comes outside and he starts vocalizing, crying, running up, down, up, down, up, down the grass. And we all just start crying because what we realize is that he's looking for his mom and he is calling for his mom. And obviously I'm getting emotional, like he's not going to find her. But what happened was she had a lot of white rhino babies that were older. So much bigger, but still young. And there was a fence line and all of the white rhinos came over to the fence line to like be there for him and to like try to comfort him, because it's like, your mom can't be here, but we're here. We'll try to help you through it. And that was just so heartbreaking for all of us, you know? So when you watch that and you start to learn what they're actually doing, what's actually happening, it's so much more than what you think it is, like at first glance. You know, they're just as emotional as us. They're just as sentient as us. Their biggest predator is us. Like, so we're literally trying to save them from ourselves. So that's why once I knew this was happening, I had to jump in and dedicate my life to this. And it's not just rhino that we're saving. It just happens that Munu has kind of become the poster child in a way for the work we're doing. And if you can protect a piece of land with a rhino in it, you can protect everything in that land, because the rhino is the hardest one to protect. So eventually when we are able to open up, drop fences and open up that corridor, we'll have everything there, elephants and lions and wild dogs, and absolutely everything will come through there. And there are other animals on the land right now, and there's a leopard that comes and visits, which we love. And it's also heartbreaking because once in a while she'll take one of the kudus and you hear them scream. And it's conservation, and the wild is tough. I mean, because everything has to eat. And how do you choose? The one thing I don't think I could ever do is a predator sanctuary, because like, you know, lions, you still have to feed them, and predators eat meat. Like rhinos are easy. They're vegan like me. You know, they eat veg, they eat trees. That I can do. But I can't be one to decide what lives and what dies. Yeah. I want to give everything a chance to live and just try to give them the safe space that they need to be wild, and then nature can take its course. But I can't knowingly be the cause of that kind of death. But I want to do as much good as I can while I'm here, because I feel like that is my mission on the planet, is to try to help these animals and to help. It's helping nature at the same time. If we buy up these properties around us, it's to protect the land and to conserve the land so it doesn't get turned into farmland or something else and destroyed. Because people will come in and just flatten the land, and there's so much beautiful vegetation, and it's just saving land is a really big deal right now. So if anybody out there wants to help buy land and be a part of the project, please contact me.
Well, I did want to ask, because I think a lot of people, you know, in theory, they support animal rights or conservation efforts, but maybe they feel fatigued when they see, you know, and maybe feel helpless and like there's nothing they can do when they see whatever factory farming videos or an elephant being brutalized. Or maybe they just don't realize the ways that they can have an impact. So what are some of the ways that, you know, everyday people can help out these efforts?
You know, I think education, one, is really important, because understanding what the issues are so that you can then educate others and spread the word of that is really important. One of the things that I used to always say when I'd go on a show is like, don't ride an elephant when you go on vacation. And people were like, why? And what an elephant has to go through, it's called breaking the elephant. Because to break an elephant, you have to break their spirit down to a point that they give in. And it's like an elephant, a young elephant wants to play and be joyous and like be a young, you know, lad. And these people will stop them from doing that. They'll withhold food, they'll chain them up, and they'll make it so that they've lost all hope in life, and they just give up. And when they give up is when you can ride the elephant. And so that kind of thing, it's exactly the same with any animal and any kind of human entertainment. That's why I'm really against horse-drawn carriages. My cousin did an undercover story on that, and the torture and abuse they go through. People just have no idea. So I think education is really, really important, and sharing things online. I think even attending fundraisers, it makes a really big deal. And if you're able to do more and you want to do more, really find the organization you want to get involved with, and ask to look behind the curtains. Make sure your money's not going into a black hole. Make sure you're a part of the project. See what you're putting into it. We're very transparent with our donors. We do FaceTime with them all the time out there. We show them everything that's going on. We show them all of our records and all of our books, and we're very, very transparent with that. And I think every organization that's a nonprofit must be that. People have to know where their money is going, and they want to be involved. So finding those projects where you can really get involved. I mean, we always need people to help. We always need people to be a part of it with us. We can't do this alone. We can't do it in a silo. We need partners. And the more we all work together, the more we're going to win this war, because it really is a war. What people sometimes ask is why should someone in the Midwest care about something that happens in South Africa? Well, the people that are doing the poaching, that are pulling those strings, they're syndicates, and they're the same syndicates that do human trafficking, drugs, guns. So if you know somebody, or you have someone in your family that either, say, died of an overdose or got killed in a war, it's quite likely that wildlife trafficking might have funded the gun that killed him, or funded the drugs that... It's all the same people. Literally different times of the month, they switch from one thing to another. They'll start to get heat on them, they'll go do something else, and they have a pattern that they just keep it going. So it really does affect everyone, and it's just different people come at it from different angles. And wildlife trafficking is a really horrific thing, and that's what's happening with when they want the horn and the ivory, it's going to trafficking. The only other thing that the rhino horn is also going for in some Eastern cultures, it's seen as a status symbol. So if we were in a business meeting and I want the meeting to go through and the business deal to be made, I'd give you a big, beautiful rhino horn as a show of good faith that this deal is going to go forward. And so making it not cool, making it not a status symbol is really, really important. There's nowhere that horn should be but on a rhino. And it's horrible, but one of the things that people do now in Africa to try to protect their rhino is they cut the horn. And it's not a surefire thing, but it really does work in some areas. And we have to do it quite often. You immobilize the animal with an anesthetic and you cut the horn, but you have to still leave about 4 fingers worth. It's like the quick of your nail. You can't take the whole nail out of the nail bed, but you can cut your nail. It's the same thing. So in the distance, if a poacher is looking for a rhino in the dark, they don't see the horn, they're less likely to risk their life for that animal because there's a lot less there for them to take. And in some parks, in some areas, they've had 100% rate of saving their animals so far. So the success rates can be high, but the horns really should be on the rhinos.
Yeah. Well, it's great to hear about that work you're doing. I just have a few more general questions as we wrap up here. What is a book that you would recommend to people?
Ooh, gosh. A book. There's a book called Killing for Profit, Julian Rademeyer, and it really explains the poaching crisis and the money and the syndicates, everything I was just talking about. It's such a great book if you want to learn more about this work and what's happening, Killing for Profit. That's a good one. And what is a piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self? Or just something you wish you would have known? there's so many different answers to this. I wish I would have learned Texas Hold'em when I was 5. I wish I would have learned this game younger. I think I do truly believe everything happens for a reason. I know a lot of people say, oh, it's crap. But for me in my life, I do feel like everything happens for a reason. And when something seemingly bad happens, quite often it'll lead you somewhere else that you're supposed to be. And it just means maybe you're not on your path and you're not where you're supposed to be in that moment. So always looking for the silver lining in anything. So even if I get knocked out of a tournament, I've got to look at the silver lining because there's always one. So really feeling that and not taking things so seriously because, I'm very competitive and I need to get rid of the competitive nature. It's just something that's in me. So I think the more you can just take life, there's a lot of things that are going on in the world that are much more serious and much more horrible than like losing at the poker table. Now that I've started doing this work, it makes a lot of other things not look like so bad, which it's all perspective, right? And when something bad happens, sometimes I'll be like, this is not actually bad. So learning, like, I think what your reason on the planet is as early as you can. Because you always have your job, but I think everyone has a mission on this planet and figuring out what that mission is. And if you're lucky enough that your job and your mission can be the same thing, then you're a really happy person.
Yeah, absolutely. And last question here. What is your favorite life lesson that can be drawn from poker?
Well, I think patience. Because I'm a tournament player and you have to be patient in tournaments. I've always felt like patience, I'm very good at being patient at the poker table, I think, but patience is something that really comes to mind because a lot of people say, oh, I couldn't sit there for that long. And quite often you're playing with people that don't want to sit there for that long. So if you're patient enough, they're going to give you their chips because they want to go. So I think patience is a big part of it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Shannon, it's been so great talking to you about all these different things. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks.